What's up, guys? Raziel here with another video for you. But before I even go into this video at all, I want to thank everybody for the massive amount of support that I got on my Blood Death Knight balance issues, a bulleted list. It's fantastic, got a lot of views. It's being passed around on the Blizzard forums, and there'll be a link in the description to that video so that you can see it if you haven't seen it yet. But I'm assuming if you're here, you probably have seen it already. I'm not going to go too much into specific classes in this video about balance, but what I want to touch on in this video is something that is kind of just a huge raging pile of horse shit, and it's how the communication has been between Blizzard and the player base so far in Legion. Now, Legion is an expansion that has a lot of potential. I mean, they have some really good things on their hands here as far as content. I've been really impressed with the amount of content and the sheer fact that 7.1 was announced before the game even launched. Spoke volumes in what Blizzard has learned from their past mistakes of content droughts. But I'll go in more to that when I make my video about my review of Legion so far, now that it's been out about a month. I'll go into more detail there later in another video. But today I want to talk about a huge problem, and it just blows my mind how we're in this situation, because I stand by my earlier statement from my other video where I said that I believe it is my opinion that class balance and class design in Legion is the worst it has ever been since Vanilla WoW, and so much of it could have been avoided if Blizzard would just communicate, and part of communicate means listen. It's beyond me how an expansion could ship where one of the classes, who all three specs are unviable for current content, Warlocks, they have since been buffed, but how that even was there to begin with is a huge issue. How we have Blood Death Knights that now that Mythic Parses are starting to come out in World of Logs, we see that Blood Death Knights are, big surprise, are fucking struggling on things because they don't have a baseline damage mitigation, and the mastery isn't working properly, is very weak. And the fact that consumption is a garbage artifact talent ability that provides no benefit in single target situations and doesn't really provide that much mitigation. Then we have like warriors who had, their mitigation was so overtuned that people were calling it, instead of ignore pain, they were calling it ignore mechanics, because it's virtually what it was, which it did get nerfed, but it got nerfed in kind of a weird way. But they're still top tank, Prot Warrior. Ret was unviable. Any mage spec other than fire was unviable. Frost DKs are unviable, and technically kind of still are, because one of the big issues with Frost, and I'll go into this in more detail later in another video, but is the fact that Frost and a lot of these other specs are broken on a mechanical level, on a design level. So Frost is going to get the same treatment that it's always gotten, because it's been broken for years and years now, where Blizzard's going to, hold on to these broken mechanics, and it'll just get band-aid hotfixes and patches throughout the course of the entire expansion, never really excelling because they just keep buffing how much damage the abilities do, or buffing a 2 or a 4-piece set bonus in order to make it viable, when in reality it could be fixed if they just fix the mastery, or fix how the mechanic works, like killing machine, things like that. But I digress. This is Blizzard. It's not going to happen. The chances of that happening are extremely small, like the chance of me getting the second legendary, like the one that I just got yesterday. Anyway, that's probably still a bug in the game. People getting legendaries faster than people that don't even have one yet, which they said they fixed, but they did not. But skipping all ahead to that, I want to talk about Blizzard's communication, or better phrase, lack thereof, to its player base and to each other. And the first thing I want to talk about with this communication is class fantasy. Now, what is class fantasy? Well, class fantasy is the newest Blizzard buzzword they can use to pretty much justify any terrible design, class design, ability design thing that happens in the game. If they say it's class fantasy, that generally implies that that's just how they see it. That's how they want the class to be. No ifs, ands, or buts. So if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. That's technically what it is. because I mean, I compare it to if I was a landlord of a complex of apartments, and I decided that in all the apartments I was going to instead of having a bathtub, I was just going to have a hole in the ground. And instead of having a toilet, there was another smaller hole in the ground right next to it. And then when I start getting complaints from my tenants saying, hey, I can't shit. There's a huge hole in the ground and it stinks and there's no toilet seat and I can't flush it and my whole house smells like my shit. I mean, what do I do? And I can just say, well, you know what? It's my vision of the apartment, of how they should be. And it's how I want it to be. It's in line with what I think it should be. And what I'm seeing more and more of is Blizzard using class fantasy as a scapegoat in a way to justify bad decisions, and it's a way to get out of. And I'm not saying that they're malicious and twisting their mustaches, but it's pretty much a buzzword they can use to justify anything until the time comes that they can patch it and fix it, if they agree with what's the problem. But they can still not apologize for things because of class fantasy. And unfortunately, I think a lot of class specs, a lot of abilities, and a lot of entire designed classes was sacrificed to the gods of class fantasy. A good example is I mentioned this in another video where the CM for Blizzard lore put out when Death Knights were complaining about mobility, said, hey, this is a problem, we're too slow, and their thing was, it's part of the class fantasy. Death Knights are supposed to be slow, but feel really strong up close. Well, guess what? Go look at the parses, okay? They are really slow, you got that part right, but because they're really slow, their damage sucks, because there's a lot of fights, you have to get in and out, you have to move around, and they can't do that well. They're the worst mobility class in the game. They also hold back Mythic Plus groups because they're trying to rush through things to beat a timer. You can't do it if you're a Death Knight, regardless of what Death Knight spec you're playing. On my Blood Death Knight that I have played since Wrath of the Lich King, I am literally fucking carrying around swiftness potions because I have to keep up, to keep moving, and certain mechanics it helps. It's really sad and it's really pathetic. Like I said, this is the worst balance has been in my opinion. And granted, like a lot of buffs and hot fixes have come in, but a lot of those have been band-aids. And I think Blizzard knows this, and hopefully we'll see some big changes in 7.1. But again, we're going to go back to the whole communication thing. So many of these problems and these outrages of the player base could have been avoided if Blizzard had just listened. What they said, they needed more data before they could do a balance, which then right after they go ahead and nerf all tanks by 10%. Fucking GG Blizz. But then they say they need more data. What happened to all the data in the 5+ months of Legion Alpha, the few months of Legion Beta, the month of PTR, the 2 months of PTR, the pre-patch going live? They had all this time to balance, and they do a lot of stealth nerfs and then don't say anything about it until they get caught. And then when they do get caught, they're always really apologetic, saying, hey, we should have handled that better. In fact, at Gamescom, let me see if I have the footage here. At Gamescom, Ian Hazacasa said that a nerf was done was not handled well. It should have just stealthily been by. The player base should have been alerted about it. And not even 2 or 3 days later, after he apologized for that, the stealth Blood Death Knight, Blood Boil, and Blood Boil nerf, the 39% damage nerf to Blood Boil went out. That's not acceptable. So either Ian's a big liar, or he really, the left hand, like I said in an earlier video, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing all the time, which is why it seems like Blizzard contradicts themselves so much.
Some people are asking in terms of when you guys make changes and hot fixes, and obviously people love communication and they love to be told these kinds of things, and oh my god, my class all of a sudden has been nerfed, or wow, I'm doing double the damage, and most of the time you guys are pretty good about it, but sometimes some things kind of go stealth, and so do you guys have a particular position on that, or do you think some things are just not important, or sometimes you miss the mark, or
sometimes we drop the ball? There were a great example, the Exsanguinate nerf, that was very unfortunate. Having the experience of, like, in the middle of a raid, wait a minute, my talent just got way weaker. Did anyone else notice this? Oh, crap, what happened? That shouldn't have happened. We've since then tried to make a point of posting all class changes like a couple of days ahead of when we're expecting them to go live, even holding them back at times if community messaging hasn't gone out. Like, what happened there actually was Normally, it takes a couple days for a hotfix to, especially during a very busy time like this right now, where we're fixing a ton of bugs, there's a lot of iteration happening. It sometimes takes a little while for a hotfix to work its way through the system, and during that time, our community team documents it. That one just got verified and pushed out in record speed and got ahead of the rest of the process. So that's something we feel strongly about. We never want players to worry that things are going to stealth change out from under them, especially when it comes to their classes. The last thing we want you worrying about is, wow, you're looking at your logs for some boss some night and you realize that you had really bad luck with procs, or was it luck, or did we just nerf you, right? And
It just feels,
that's crappy.
yeah, just
I mean, it doesn't make sense that you can, live in front of a bunch of your fans say, this stealth nerf went out in a very bad way. We don't want to do that again. And then the exact same thing happens a few days later. It sounds to me like we're either they're just confused internally or they're just telling us what we want to hear. Because right now, having been in the beta myself, I was in beta. I wasn't in alpha, but I was in beta. But I was very, very observant of the alpha forums when they were active. And pretty much every issue people are having with their classes right now, pretty much every issue that I mentioned about Blood Death Knights in my previous video was an issue at some point during alpha or beta and was never resolved. It wasn't listened to. Well, there were post after post, like hundreds of pages of threads on their feedback forums telling them what was wrong with the class, how to fix it, great suggestions of what they think could help. So when, it's kind of sad that there's no excuse for things to be this way. There's no reason. My hypothesis about the whole situation is that, Legion suffered a little bit from the same bug that Warlords of Draenor did, or Warlords of Shithouse, whatever you want to call it, suffered from, where Blizzard saw the deadline coming. They knew they had to get the content out or they were screwed. In Warlords of Draenor, what they did is they just cut a whole bunch of content and then kind of abandoned the expansion altogether. I think what happened with Legion is just an hypothesis. I'm not saying this is gospel truth and this is exactly what happened, but this is what it looks like to me, is that they made sure that didn't happen again as far as content was concerned. They didn't want another content drought. They wanted more content, faster, better quality, which they, in my opinion, have achieved for the most part. I mean, they have a lot of content in Legion. I will give credit where credit is due. But then what they found is, hey, we need to balance classes still. Shit, what do? They cut balancing classes and cut some mechanic design instead of cutting content, because they figured we'll just balance them out. It's easier to balance hotfix and then patch in changes to classes, that are not performing well. But that is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea in an expansion like this. The reason why is because of artifacts and the extreme gating that happens. Because realistically, I mean, let's say you get nerfed really hard and you're let's use an example. You're, a proc paladin, let's say, and you're performing pretty well. Blizzard nerfs the living piss out of you. And so all of a sudden, the last 4 or 5 weeks, whatever, of your life feel like you completely wasted them because now you're a GIMP spec that's not as viable and may not be viable at all anymore. Or is not performing well, or is mechanically now working in a way you don't like to play. It's not as simple as in past expansions where you go, okay, well, I'll just re-roll. Nope, you can't just re-roll, because if you re-roll, now you're gated behind the Nightfallen reputation to unlock certain dungeons. You're gated behind your artifact power. You're gated behind your mission, your class hall campaign. You can't just catch up. You're screwed. You have to put in another 5 to 6 weeks to stay caught up. Maybe take a week off of that if it's a lot of time has passed since the release and your artifact power research is a little quicker. But that catch-up mechanic, as it is right now, is not good enough. It's not working. There's no way to catch up on rep. There's no way to go through your campaign missions faster. The ones that are a day long, 24 hours long, 12 hours long, 8 hours long, and you can only do one at a time. On top of researching all the stuff that your class hall can do. It's all gated now. So then you're like, all right, well, I can't do that. I have a bunch of research notes, but then you have two options at that point. If you can, re-rolling is kind of out of the question. If you want to stay competitive and stay in whatever raid level you're doing and PvP level you're doing, instead what you're going to have to do is pick another spec. What if you don't like that spec? You have two options. You pick another spec, dump more artifact, but grind your ass off to get that artifact power at least competitive, and then or quit. Those are your options. And in my opinion, I think more people will quit than spend that kind of time, because they're burned by the fact that what they spent so much time on and what they like to play was just nerfed into the ground or never made viable to begin with, i.e. Frosty Case. And it's really sad because Blizzard is in this position because they don't communicate to their players. How much better would it be if you were a Frost Death Knight and you know you're doing shit, you know you're a terrible spec right now, but Blizzard just sends a post and says, "Hey, we're aware that Frost is low and not performing well. We're looking into it. We're working on it. Be patient." Feel a lot better. You're like, okay, well, maybe bad now, but Blizzard's not going to let it stay that way. Blizzard doesn't do that, though. They don't communicate hardly ever, and when they do, it's usually snide, bullshit remarks or a joke over Twitter. I mean, in my opinion, Twitter should never be a source of getting information to your player base. 140 character limit on a game that supports over 6 million people? Are you fist fucking me right now? I mean, look at that. Twitter is a joke, and it shouldn't be used for this. Twitter should be for things like, hey, my Twitch stream is live. This is what I ate for dinner. That's what fucking Twitter is for, okay? Balance and all that crap shouldn't be on there. Blizzard has so many outlets to communicate to their players. They have the Blizzard launcher, where you could post anything they want there. They have this screen right here at the login screen. They could post anything they want there. They have the forums. They have their main website. There's so many options for them. Why are they doing Twitter? It's completely asinine. All right? It's stupid. Blizzard communication right now is causing 90% of their problems. And the fact that they ignored so much positive feedback during the alpha beta PTR that could have saved their ass. Quite frankly, could have made all of this a non-issue right now. But they didn't. They didn't do any of that because they're stuck in their ways. I mean, how long were they stuck in their ways of saying, faster expansions, faster, we're going to get more content, faster. It never happened until finally they admitted they were wrong this year, gave up, and said, we just need to do more content, support our expansions longer with more content. An expansion will come out every 2 years. Okay, it took them that long to admit defeat there and realize that they were being morons and were trying to do something that they couldn't accomplish. All right, I give them props for finally figuring that out. They probably, again, could have figured that out by listening to us sooner, saying this isn't working, 4 years ago, but whatever. Now they're doing the same thing. They're being stubborn about communicating and being vocal and transparent with their player base. That's what needs to happen. There's a lot of classes right now that are garbage, completely garbage. A lot of specs that are unviable, and you've designed these gorgeous weapons and these, a lot of times there's these great campaigns around something that no one's ever going to use because it's trash and it's not balanced properly. Once again, I'll use Frosty Case as an example. They're using technically rebuilt Frostmournes, but they hit like a paraplegic baby with a pool noodle. I don't even know how that's possible, but that's what they're doing. I mean, come on, Blizzard. You had so much time to balance this out. And now all you're doing is stealth nerfing things here and there, Band-Aid patching things, when a lot of these classes are broken, they're fundamentally broken on a mechanical level. And I know you can't fix that via a hotfix. So we need to see, hey, we are aware of this, and this. We're going to fix it in 7.1. Or something. Because right now, it's just not there. Hey, dog, shut up. Sorry, it was my dog. Anyway, guys, this is what's really pissing me off right now, is Blizzard's complete lack of communication. A lot of the stuff they're doing seems really shady, and they're causing themselves way more problems than they need. If they would just be vocal, don't be snide, and don't be assholes to the player base, because the player base is frustrated. They invested time, they invested money into these characters, and they want to play what they want to play. I'm not saying every class should be the absolute top. I understand someone has to be at the bottom, but it's okay if the guy at the bottom is 20 to 30k DPS below the guy at the top, or the tank that's at the bottom, has 5 to 10 points on the logs difference in tank survivability. That's okay. That's balanced. It's not balanced when it's 40 points on the tank tree. It's not balanced when other classes are doing over 100,000 damage more than another class. That is not okay. And the fact that it's here, it just solidifies my statement. Class balance and design is the worst it has ever been in the history of World of Warcraft, with the exception of Vanilla. And Vanilla had the excuse of they were just learning how. They were just doing it. In my opinion, I wish that Blizzard would just stop redesigning the classes every fucking expansion. It's unnecessary. It's very frustrating, especially if it's in an iteration that you really like, and then all of a sudden they just ruin the spec for you that you played for 10 years. Or find the specs that no one likes to play and fix those. That's fine. But so much of this other stuff is just dumb, and again, they can raise the banner of class fantasy and they think it's okay. Anyway, guys, that's my rant for today. That's what I feel is going on right now. I'm going to do an entire review of Legion here then in the next week. Right now, I'm planning on getting at least a video out a week. Again, thanks everybody for the massive amount of support, for the views and the subs. I gained over 100 subs already on that, on my video about the Blood Death Night balance. Continue to do that. Be vocal, guys. Send things to their Twitter account. Video links to the transcript of that video, links to what you think should be fixed. And we got to be vocal. It means squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So, anyway, guys, that's it. I will see you again later. Please sub and like if you liked it. If not, then, rip me, I guess. Anyway, get on that shit. Talk to you guys later. Keep it real.